Hi. I'm Reza. I'm going to help moderate this panel today. I'm excited to be here. Have y'all felt like the temperature go down in this room?
Yeah.
Yes. I think they're trying to keep us awake, so maybe that's good for us. Cool. So we'll start with a quick intro for each of the panelists, and then we're going to do a quick exercise as an audience where you'll try to pick a person that you're sitting next to, talk about sort of a scaling issue, and then we'll ask some questions. You're welcome if there's a question that you want to ask while we're talking, please jump in, or we can also save some time at the end to ask questions as well. So I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Reza Shirazi. I'm a principal product manager at Procore. I work on our data and AI team. I work on with Procore Search within the Procore application. Happy to be here. Excited to see product people in person after a while. Some familiar faces, some new faces, so good to see you all. I'll hand it off to Juliana.
Hi, everyone. Juliana Richard Butler. I'm Director of Product for our mobile products at Procore. So I'm very lucky to work with Reza. And Procore is the leading construction management platform and also now moving into fintech for construction. And yeah, my career has been focused on leading product teams at fast scaling, hyper growth companies. So have spent my career in healthcare primarily. So Athena Health, I ran into a couple former colleagues, which is great. Athena Health, the advisory board company, now Optum, and Babylon, and now Procore. So really excited to chat about the challenges of growing.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Shireen Brathwaite, and I'm a director of product at Aurora Solar. And Aurora Solar, I like to describe the product as if Google Maps and Autodesk had a baby of a product. It's a solar design software tool where you can really imagine, or you can look at houses or commercial buildings and figure out whether it would be a good idea to put solar on the roofs of those buildings. In the last year, my company has grown from 250 people a year ago to 509 people just as of Monday. So very much in hypergrowth mode and really excited to share part of that journey with you today.
Good, thank you. Hi, I'm Raj Jangareddy. I'm a principal product manager at Walmart. I lead data privacy products for Walmart, both US and international markets. What that means is a customer these days can request to opt out of certain selling and sharing of data, or deleting their data, or accessing what we have as a business on them, and we have to adhere to the request and provide all the information, look into the business, find wherever it is, both offline, online, and provide it back to the customer. So it's pretty complicated on the back front end, but it is, given the size of Walmart, and given how old it is, it's pretty complex in the back end how it pulls the information. And we have some AI and some other things in the back end to help us. But overall, yeah, it's a pretty challenging work, especially in the age of privacy these days.
Great, thanks. So we're going to start with a quick exercise in the audience. Pick the person sitting next to you, and we'll take 2 minutes just to talk about a challenge that you might have faced at your organization around scaling and growth. So we'll do that for 2 minutes, and then I'll bring us back together, and we'll start with the questions.
But with Walmart, it's the last 3 years. I'm thinking hopefully the conversation is more interesting with the audience. Special questions. I don't know. I'm looking for. Yeah. The product alliance. Actually, Ruth reached out to me online. Yeah. So I like this. Opportunity actually. Maybe next time I will reach out to them, or there is something else going on.
I reached out to them because I had like nothing before her. I remember talking to her.
Nice. Cool. Actually, I want to reach out to them for future opportunities if they're in Austin again. Yeah. It's actually spread across. I'm the only one from Austin. My team is in California, Bentonville, Preston, India, all across. Yeah, 100%. And the way the complexity of product is, it has to connect with all the business, right? So even though our core team is in, I said distributed, wherever Walmart is, we have a team. Because we need to connect with each team individually. Right? So in that sense, we are everywhere.
All right, let's take a few seconds to wrap it up, and we're gonna bring this back together. Man, I think I started something. Everyone's really excited about talking to one another. Maybe we should stop the panel and let you just keep talking. All right, well, so we're gonna start off. Opening question is, what I'm gonna ask is, tell us a little bit about your team and how it has grown, so that we have a little bit of context for each of you, your team, and as you talk about the questions that come up, we'll have some context for it. So, Juliana, we'll start with you.
Cool, sure. So currently, our mobile team is 4 very senior principal level product managers, and all with a specialty in mobile. So past experience in the digital space, some in construction technology or prop tech. And yeah, when I arrived, it was me. So I'm sure some of you all have faced that experience too, where you get there and you're like, okay, what is this going to be? This is going to be a team, and we need to decide how we're going to establish ourselves, not just in terms of hiring, but also what we mean to the organization. And so, yeah, in the past year and a half, we've hired in 4 people, and also are deploying a strategy to extend the mobile space and thinking into the existing web PMs into Procore. So it's an organization of about 150 product management folks, inclusive of 50 additional folks focused on product ops and documentation. And yeah, it's been a really exciting journey so far. So yeah.
So when I came to Aurora, I was managing 4 PMs to start. And over the last year, so I've been there for a year, and over the last year, I've hired a bunch. I just made my last hire on Monday. Yay. That was a lot of work. I think, so now my team overall has a head count of 9, with 7 of those slots filled. And then there's 2 more slots, but those are for, so I manage 2 group PMs, and they have open head count. Interesting, I think one part of hiring was coming into a team where there was a PM who had a massive area. They had hired so many engineers to the point where he was managing a team of 25 engineers. So we had to figure out, how do we subdivide his area, hire a PM to help take some of that load from him, and just figure out the onboarding of that. So there's a lot of growth and figuring out. I think when you inherit a team, a lot of people of product or the chief product officer. Then they get a director. They're a little bit skeptical. They're like, oh, I was a lot closer to the top before. But I think if you can come in and really invest in their growth and help them, just give them a lot more attention and care, I think that really changes the dynamic.
Yeah, so myself, my situation was similar to Juliana's, where when I joined, I was reporting to the head of the product back then. This is a new team that was forming. I was the only real, actual product manager managing the product. From that day to this day, I mean, we have grown like a 10-people team at this point. And obviously, back then, there was no processes, no frameworks, no, the ways of working or the product mindset for stakeholders and ourselves wasn't there. Now we are much more matured in terms of our processes and our frameworks, but also working with stakeholders, thinking through their product mindset.
That's great. So we're going to dive in a little bit over here, and we're going to talk about sort of the scaling challenges sort of in three groups. We're going to start with talking about people, like what the scaling challenges with people, then we're going to talk about process, and then we'll talk about the actual product. So I'll start with you, Raj, sort of specifically scaling challenges related to the people on the product team.
For people, I would say we want to make sure that when we are hiring at the right time, at the right pace, right? Because sometimes the challenge was, are we hiring just because we are overloaded or existing PMs, or do we have a clear understanding of the path that, hey, this part of the product is going to scale so that a new PM can be assigned so that he or she can grow into this role over time, and they will have an opportunity for their career as well, right? So that's one of the challenging pieces to think through. When is the right time? Are we rushing into it or not? We actually were actually on the other extreme where we did not scale too fast. And I was the only one at the time, like I was telling, right, when I joined. And we had like close to 70 or 80 engineers on the engineering side, which has scaled quite faster than us. So, and on top of all the product work you do, you need to keep engineers busy, and keeping 80 engineers busy was a challenging task. And
On the residential side, which is historically our bread and butter, much bigger part of the organization, we thought about like what are the different logical product areas. And there were really two main criteria that we used to think about organizing the product org within each of those business units. First was really use cases, and the second was personas. And I'm going to give an example from earlier in my career when I used to work in education. And if you think about personas and organizing a product team by persona in the education market, an example of that would be where you'd have three teams, one focused on serving instructors, another focused on serving students, and then a third focused on serving instructional designers. And that's an example where you've got organizational units really learning their personas, their target personas really, really well. In solar, that model did not work. So we thought a lot more about use case-based org structure, where the different use cases were more like site modeling, which is thinking about the roof, system design, which is thinking about the panels, and then permitting, which just as like a whole different process. And that's really where we ended up in terms of the org structure for people.
So definitely have had both experiences, I would say. And Raj, I feel your pain, because when I joined, there were 50 engineers and myself and no backlog. So hyper growth it can be difficult when you're not growing together, right, as a team. And I think, like, to echo your statement, it's aligning with your engineering UX partners. So alignment, not just with your direct peers, but then also with the organization. So crafting a plan for, hey, this is what we're going to do here for you all, and this is why we need your support. I think that's just as important as building that plan in a product, from a product standpoint. And then I also would say, as someone who is starting a brand new team, your first hire is your most important hire for the team, and it sets the tone, the pace of the team. And I do think for anyone who's hiring right now, or maybe hasn't hired and is going to hire in the future, really consider looking at people who are your opposite. Because when you're starting something from scratch and alone, you really need to create an ecosystem of dialogue with your team. And so that was really important to me, coming not from the construction industry. I looked for a product manager who was from the construction industry, so that we could balance each other. And then as the team grew, finding different characteristics and growing the team holistically. And then I would agree with Shireen. We actually ended up moving away from a persona-driven backlog and model that had been really helpful when Procore was a small company, but as we were starting the team, it was, a 500, 600 million ARR business that we were supporting, and it didn't make sense we couldn't keep up with the number of personas we were supporting as we were growing. So it really turned into, hey, let's go move to themes of use cases. So again, how can you get there, I think is a really good question. Part of it is being a good listener your first 2 months when you're hired, and then also being open to being wrong, right? So product people are opinionated, tend to be drivers, which is great, but growth, the scale and the speed is so terrific. You really have to be looking at what's happening around you as much as what you want to do.
That's great. So let's move to talk about process, challenges with process. Shireen, I'll start with you. We'll go to Juliana, and then we'll go Raj. So I'm just trying to round robin a little bit, give folks a chance to speak first.
Oh, yes. I took some notes here. When I think about process, so when you're at a tiny little startup, you get to do everything. And even when you're at a 50-person company in product, you might be doing your own user research, your own sort of data analysis. And then as you grow and you get to like a 500-person stage or whatever point you think it's necessary, you get this, what I'll call luxuries. And these luxuries are around having a separate user research team, or a separate product marketing team, or a separate data science team. And I think that how you work when you have these luxurious supporting functions, I think is really, really different. And it's something where I think it's really about trade-offs, because there is so much risk when you have a separate user research team that as a PM, you actually lose the face time with customers. And then are you really getting that level of empathy you would have gotten if you were doing all of the user research interviews yourself? And so this is something that I've been thinking a lot about with my team, on how do you find the right balance and process between getting some face time as a PM versus leveraging these supporting luxurious teams that are now there to help you as you're growing so quickly. And I think one thing is still being involved with some level of all of these supporting functions, whether it's user research, product marketing, or data analysis, such that you're doing some of it, but it's more that instead of having to conduct 10 interviews yourself, maybe you conduct 1 or 2, and then you rely on a separate team to conduct the rest, and then you compare notes and synthesize and things like that. But I do think it's really, really important that as you scale, you don't just say, oh, well, this other department is going to take care of that, now I don't need to do it at all. And then you lose some level of true understanding of what's actually happening directly with your customers, or even in the data. There's so much risk with data scientists and data analysts when you're looking at data for that data to be wrong or for you to misunderstand what that data represents. And I don't know about y'all, and if you've ever looked at data and thought it meant one thing, and then when you really dug in, it meant something really, really different. And when you're making data-driven decisions, and if you don't truly understand like what that data represents, then you are in for like a whole heap of hurt. So I would just caution folks as you're scaling to stay close to those supporting functions.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it can be a challenge, especially as you have so much territory to cover. I would say my manager, my boss, who's the VP of growth at our company, Mobile's in growth. So we're growth within a hyper-growth company, effectively. She said to everyone as they joined the team, you know, what works today isn't going to work 3 months from now, and it's definitely not going to work 6 months from now. And I think process is one of the first things that breaks down when you're in hypergrowth, because if you're in a company that doubles or triples, which frequently happens as you grow, you have to be okay to amend your process. And for product people, a lot of times you're driving or establishing that process. And so for us, it really, we felt the pain around stakeholder management. The internal signals from our company were as important as the external signals from our market. And so finding a way to create a process taking in hundreds of, thousands of inputs from many places to actually craft and support our backlog. So it's different for every person, it's different for every company, and it's also different for every industry. So construction is a very, not highly digitized industry, so your competitors are actually pretty open about what they're doing, which means you really can take a lot of that information and use it for your own product. And yeah, I think it really varies by team, but I would say you have to triage in your mind, like, I can't do everything at once, and a lot of these things are going to change. So what's going to cause the most heartburn to my team, and how can I create a process around it and then keep evolving it?
Yeah, and I think I definitely agree with what both of you said. I just want to more stress on the process is so important for scaling, because we want to put the process first and scale later, at least a bare bone of the process. If not, we'll be spending so much time putting off different fires, because as the team scales, everyone is going to do their own thing, and we're not going to know what happened, why, and we'll spend a lot of time in the research and investigation mode. So process is definitely more important to put it as a foundational. And also, as a team grows, in that process, I think the communication part of the process is very, very critical, that as the team grows, communication becomes more and more challenging. So we got to communicate more often and over-communicate than under-communicate. So the communication has to be part of your process all along, especially with your stakeholders. Even within the product team, you see communication gaps as the team grows. So you need to have a cadence. How does the communication information flows? Right?
Yeah, I would echo that. Like, especially, like, I want to sort of catch on your point about, like, as a product team grows, you as a product team can have challenges about communicating with one another and how y'all need to work together, and that process becomes important. The next question that I want to, wow, I got a question from the audience, so I'm going to pick that question. How do you protect products from feature Frankenstein when you're in hyper-growth mode? That relates really well to my next question, and so I'm going to use that one because I wanted to talk about, like, the challenges of product in a hyper-growth mode. So let's pick that one. Julianne, we'll start with you, and then we'll go down.
So
That's a great question.
I love this question. This is just so much of what our job is. So joining a company that was 18 years old at the time, we inherited a product that was a feature Frankenstein, to use the terminology from the audience. Who asked that question? But I just want to commend you on your poetry. Good work. And so how many people here consider themselves a platform PM? Cool. Okay. So yeah, it varies where you are. And if you're joining a larger company, a mobile product, a mobile team with a specialty tends to be a platform team, and it's a discipline, and you hopefully have your own mobile design system, and you're employing common components. And I think when you have a product like that, The most important rule you have to have is say no. You can't do everything, and actually you have to start killing products. Because to grow at scale and to actually build a platform that will serve the customers well, especially if you're going into millions of users, multi-millions of users, every company needs to refine or expand. So it may mean creating another app, it may mean killing something, it may mean killing, it should be sunsetting, excuse me. Yeah, you know, and creating a framework to figure out what that no, how to build that threshold for no is really critical.
I liked your idea of asking the audience a question, so I'm going to steal that. How many people in the audience feel like you have a really clear strategy that has been communicated by your leadership? Maybe like half. All right, well, lucky for y'all who do. To answer the question, how do you protect products from feature Frankenstein? I think it's really about having a clear strategy. So when you have a clear strategy, especially company-wide strategy, and then individual product area strategy, then as you're getting more and more feedback, unmet needs from go-to-market, from sales, from success, from everyone else, you can say this is either more or less strategically aligned to your goals. And when you publish that strategy and make it really clear to all of your stakeholders, they almost can answer that question for themselves before they even come to you with that feature that's going to add on to that feature Frankenstein of a product, or have that risk. And I found that when you're really great about clearly communicating that strategy, then my life gets so much easier, and the life of all the PMs that I'm managing gets so much easier, because people don't even come to you with the Frankenstein additional thing, because they know that it's either aligned or not aligned. And I think if you're in a place where you don't have that strategy, which I know I have been, not at my current company, but in the past, is that you really need to harass your leadership, your product leadership, until you feel like you can collaboratively create that strategy together, just to make sure that you are aligned as a company and as a product org toward what are your goals, what are you working toward, and what is the strategy, which is really just the approach to achieving that goal.
Yeah, I concur on that too. Just adding on top of that, right? Once you have the strategy, what we have done in our team at Walmart is we created a Confluence page where each PM has to put all their product charter over there, including the strategy, vision, KPIs, metrics, the roadmap. And all of this has been aligned with the stakeholders, right? So communication becomes very important. So no one can come and say, hey, I want this, I want that. Like all these Frankenstein feature asks could be said, hey, it's all good, it's in the backlog, but it's not on the roadmap because of the alignment we already got, right? Because we said that this is our strategy, these are the things we're going to focus on in the next quarter or 6 months. So this is not the time for this, right? So it's pretty easy when you do that communication ahead of time.
It's great. I love these questions from the audience. So thank you for jumping in and asking these. All right, so there's a question on here. How do you maintain team culture and product focus as you go through hypergrowth? I love this question. So we'll change it up. Shireen, we'll start with you. We'll go back to Juliana and then Raj.
So maintaining team culture is really, really hard. I'm going to just start by saying that, especially in a 100% remote world, it's so easy to fall back into this transactional model of working together. Because when people work together, it just feels like this transactional relationship, then you're in this world of just people doing as little as possible to get to the end of the day. Or just you don't earn trust between stakeholders such that it just makes everything harder. But then how do you maintain that? I think that there's lots of attempts from teams to create team bonding events that don't necessarily resonate with the team. And so I think it really is about putting that task on the team to both generate ideas for what they want to do together as a team, and to co-create that. So it's not just coming from HR or coming from the top down, such that it's going to be a set of events that really resonate with the audience. And I just think that can look so differently depending on the team. And then I think it has to be a mixture of doing non-transactional work type activities, whether it's an actual team event or it's just spending the first 10 minutes of every meeting with, so at my job we call it question of the week, and the only rule for the question of the week is that it cannot be work related. And one of the most recent ones was, I think if you had an alternate life outside of work, meaning you could keep your work day job, but you had this other job, what would it be? And I think half the people on the team wanted to be professional baseball players. But it was just a really fun activity, and we always open the beginning of every team meeting each week with that question of the week, and we invest that 10 minutes of time sharing something about ourselves that is not work related, and I think it really goes a long way to moving away from that transactional model of work to building relationships with people you know a little bit about outside of work and that you genuinely care about and enjoy spending time with.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, how do you maintain team culture? So when you're in a remote or pseudo-remote environment, the time you have together has to be used better. And so what struck me from what you were saying is I think we've all been to the really uncomfortable Zoom happy hour that you can tell everyone turns off their camera and no one wants to be at. Or maybe it was just me. But yeah, so you don't want to set time that is going to waste people's energy. And I think strong meeting, like you have to speak to your team, you have to spend time with your team, and as frequently and as often as possible. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but some people, they have a staff meeting and then they only see that person in the other meetings around work, and they forget, like, hey, actually, like, let's sync up as often as we would. Like, if I have a question, like, just get a Zoom call going instead of slacking someone. Like, try to make it a little bit more personal. But I think also just really being careful about the meetings you schedule as a product person, because, and with every meeting, making sure that there's an intention there. And at the beginning of it, I always ask myself, is this person in the right mindset to have this meeting? Is this the right meeting to be having right now? Because if you were in an office and someone came really upset from another meeting, you would probably be able to immediately be like, I don't really think this is gonna go very well. But in a remote setting, you actually may have no idea because you can't pick up those physical cues. And so I think as a product leader and as anyone who schedules a meeting, that is your responsibility to maintain so that you can actually have good interactions, regardless of if you can get in person and then have maybe a less uncomfortable happy hour situation than the Zoom ones. So.
Yeah, so I think there's two questions in there, right? So for me, I would touch upon the product focus first and then team culture. The product focus, I would say, going back to a previous conversation about having that kind of clear strategy, roadmap, KPIs, OKRs, right? These things help us, even in the hyper-growth mode, to keep every product manager focused on their product and not lose sight of it. And we measure it as we go along, which is the easier part. The team culture is more subjective and more qualitative, right? It's an art more than a science. And especially with Zoom meetings, like you said, it's hard. But I heard in one of the podcasts a very crude way of saying the culture for any team is said based on what kind of people you reward and what kind of people you fire, or something along those lines. So right, so in a very crude way, but we kind of try to do that in our team where if we hear some good feedback from any of the stakeholders, we're making sure that that person is rewarded for that or appreciated in front of others. So making sure that those little appreciation is being done and recognition is being done. At the same time, if we're getting wrong feedback, not so much, obviously having that one-on-one conversation, giving them continuous feedback for them to improve in those roles. So that kind of helps them both in a positive and negative way to set the culture, what is accepted, what is not accepted or rewarded, right? So it's a challenge, but it's an art. There is no clear-cut answer for me, at least.
Yeah, this is great. Like everyone has a slightly different answer, but really good perspectives to share. This one's a really good one. Can you share a bit about the struggle of letting go of previous responsibilities and delegating or handing off to new team roles? Juliana, we'll start with you. We'll go to Raj and then Shireen right at the end.
That's a really interesting question. So I do think that in some companies, the role of product can be a little bit more, you know, mysterious than other companies. I think it's always important if you're starting a new team to be very clear about what the role of product is, even if there's confusion on other roles. And so if you're moving teams or you're handing off a new role, right? I could not stress, like even if someone's going on like pat or mat leave, right? Write a document. What's your job? What do you do? What are the meetings you go to? What are your responsibilities? What are the things that you do? And some of them may be things you're not supposed to be doing, right? And then start crossing them out, right? And then you need to communicate that to everyone else because, again, we go back to being in a remote world. We don't have the luxury of the interpersonal connections that we used to all the time. And when you're working with other disciplines like engineering, UX, sales, product marketing, they may not know what your role is and all the things that you're doing. And so explaining that, I think, is on us as team leads. Like everyone who's a product manager is a leader on the team, right? And so, you know, kind of like what Raj was saying, reward the behavior you want to see, reward the communication you want to see by doing it yourself.
Yeah, so from my side, I think I would share that I think this is more psychological for individuals, right, where they're letting go of a product that they have worked for years on or maybe months on, whatever it is. So there's two parts to it, I feel like. So one is the fondness of the product because this is the baby they worked on and they don't want to let it go, which actually the way to help that struggle, let go is to make sure that the right product managers or new hires are being hired, so that you know that it is going to be in the safe hands, right? You're raising the standard with your hiring process and also making sure the new person, new product manager onboarding is in place and you're handing off the right documentation and everything, so you know that this product is going to not fail if you leave it to this person. So that's one part. The second part, I would say, comes from other psychological aspect is, hey, I worked on it for so long, but am I going to lose the recognition that someone else is going to get the credit of, right? So, which is natural also. So, which we work with our leaders, obviously, to make sure that this is not happening. The credit is still being equally communicated, rewarded, recognized when the transition happens. So I think addressing that explicitly outward, I think that helps in the transition process.
For my answer, I'm going to share a story that's specific to letting go of a previous responsibility. So I was a hiring manager, interviewing lots and lots of people. I had a very specific hiring process. Then I hired a group product manager. This group product manager joined. And part of handing off responsibilities was letting him hire somebody to work under him. And I had started the process, but I know everybody has different opinions on how they might hire. And the way that we handled that transition is that I had him shadow some of the hiring manager screens that I was doing. And he did 3 or 4 shadows. It was really fun when he'd be like a hire or no hire, and I'd be the opposite. And we would like hash out why we had a different opinion and really calibrate. And then I started letting him lead the hiring manager screens, and then I would shadow, and we had the same process. And we had such a wide range of different takes on these different candidates. And I remember there was this moment in that process where I went to him in a one-on-one and I said, do you feel like I'm micromanaging you? Is this like too much? I know that sometimes people get hired and it's just like you're off to the races. Your boss doesn't tell you anything about how you're supposed to do this job that you've been hired to do, especially with interviewing. And I just wanted to sort of pulse check if he felt like I was being like too involved or not involved enough. And he was just like, Shireen, you have a really different perspective on hiring, but I'm learning so much. And I really appreciate sort of seeing this really different perspective on hiring. And luckily for me, he was grateful for my involvement in that. But at this point, so I fully handed off the hiring process to him. And I also really trust his judgment and the approach he's going to take because we went through that shadowing of both sides. But it was a really interesting experience to go through what it's like to hire a manager and then to want to make sure that they're going to uphold the standards of hiring that you might have. And luckily, I'm just so glad that my direct report was like fully on board. But yeah.
That's a great story. That's a great story. The last question that I want to ask before we wrap is one that it's not on the list over here, but it's one that we often face challenges with. Like the work that we do as product managers is not just within sort of product engineering and design. It is with stakeholders, go-to-market, sales, customer success. And so I'm curious to hear your the challenges as you're scaling of working with those teams, because they're going through their scaling challenges as well. So I'll start with Raj, and then we'll work down this line.
That's a good question because, like I was saying earlier, as the team grows, the communication becomes challenging, especially with stakeholders. And then also, when these same stakeholders, when we were a smaller team, things were moving much more faster, ad hoc, we can meet in person and things will be, get done very quickly. I think the challenge there is, as the team grows, understanding the process, again, communicating that process. How does the product start from discovery, from research and solutioning, roadmap, strategy, all the way. And then also working with stakeholders and their product mindset I was talking about. So one of the things we have done at Walmart, especially in our teams, is we have started something called Product Center of Excellence, where we meet every week, we do lunch and learns, so we bring guest speakers from other departments and organizations, leaders, to build that product mindset so everyone is on the same page. And this is not just for product managers, but also invites get sent out to other stakeholders. So the stakeholders also understand how product managers think, right? What is their framework? How do they think, and what does that product mindset mean, which helps reducing the friction with all the stakeholders. And we also send newsletters. If people are not attending these, we send newsletters every quarter talking about these product concepts, what happened, the events. So it kind of builds on that, reduces the stakeholder friction, and helps in the communication of that.
When I think about this question, I really think about this dynamic where go-to-market functions could just try to dictate features to you as a product leader or to your team, or they can really be truly empowering. And when stakeholders are truly empowering, they're really sharing unmet needs or pain points. And how do you, especially as you're hyper-growth scaling, we're hiring more and more salespeople and success people and go-to-market people, and I don't want to have to repeat myself every single time that I don't want features dictated to me or my team. We want unmet needs communicated because that's truly empowering. So what I've started to do is send around Teresa Torres's continuous discovery video. I don't know if y'all have seen this. It's like the most amazing 1-hour video ever that really describes product management. And I just sent this video every time I start to feel like go-to-market teams are trying to dictate features. I just send this video. I'm like, please watch this video, and it will tell you how to empower a product development org. And it's just saved so much time, and I feel like the light bulb moment goes off where they truly internalize what the difference is between dictating features and sharing unmet needs.
Yeah, those are great. I have not checked that out, but I will. That's awesome. Love getting a recommendation. So in terms of the different kinds of stakeholders, I think in my current role, we have internal parties who have a lot of opinions on what to build. We have engineering and UX, which existed before the product team, and they have different expectations on what they want to be doing and the technical objectives. And then we have the market, right, telling us a lot of information, and we have to listen, right? And so, and being a public company, we're also on a quarterly basis, and we have a lot of formality in what we say we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And I would say that it's communication and having that communication strategy, so newsletters, meetings, et cetera, but it's also finding a way to communicate what the outcome is visually. And I think that is where getting your UX engineering and product partners together and having a very articulate pitch, like if you were pitching a startup, like tell me in under 1 minute why your plan is going to be better than the thing that I really need right now, right? And so if you can't prove it to someone in a minute, you're not there yet, right? And so I think it's that. And then when I joined, we actually had a reading, like a book club for the engineers as well, where we were suggesting they read Melissa Perry's The Build Trap. A lot of times people ask for something they think is going to change the outcome, but they have no evidence of it, right? And so if we're being outcome driven, a lot of it is, again, that pitch, that visual pitch as to why does that get us to the outcome? And then also listening, right? Like I can understand what you want, what's the need that you're trying to get to, but really creating a visual element will stick in someone's mind far longer than a document, a Slack message, an email. And so if you can really nail it, your stakeholders will be with you, right? And if not, there is a level of repetition, right, that probably has to continue. So